Oh, awesome. I think we are live right now. And I am going to give people a couple of more minutes just to come on in. And we are going to we're going to get started very soon. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back momentarily. All righty. Mike, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. And I just want to say good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Portia Barnes. I am the founder and principal consultant of the Workplace Reset Consulting Group. And I'm so grateful to have you guys here with us for the very first Dream League Lunch and Learn conversation. Today is special, of course, because this is the official beginning of the Dream League. And the Dream League is it's a live conversation series that is centered on mentorship through conversation. At the heart of the series is one guiding question. What what would you tell the woman building toward the level that you now occupy? This is not a panel. It's not a performance. It's a conversation. It's a space for wisdom, for reflection, visibility, and women reaching back while they continue to build forward. The Dream League was born from a conversation that I was having about mentorship and what it means to truly be seen before you fully see yourself. And as I thought about the women whose leadership, presence, and expertise have shaped the way I think and I build and how it's helping me to continue to become, I asked myself a question. If I could build a lineup of women whose wisdom I believe others could benefit from and who should have access, who's going to be on that list? Who is my starting lineup? And that's where the Dream League began. And today, I'm coming out the gate hitting hard, y'all. Okay. I've got the one, the only, the amazing Dr. Maya Williams here with us. So we are going to be talking about belonging is not a program, it's a system. And that statement matters very much because belonging is often talked about like it's an initiative or, a campaign or a moment, right? In reality, though, people do not experience belonging through intention alone. They experience it through systems. They experience it through correct leadership, communication, and access, things like that. And so I'm very honored to have my first conversation be with Maya here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. She
Thank
brings,
you.
um, real quick I don't know how you don't know about her, but if you just are living in the shadows, let me tell you about her. Maya brings a thoughtful, research informed, and systems aware lens to this conversation about belonging, employee experience, people analytics, and the well being and workplace conditions. What I appreciate most about her perspective is the way that she helps connect the human experience of belonging with the systems and data and leadership behaviors that shape whether belonging is actually lived. And so, again, thank you, Maya, for being here today and for helping to open up the Dream League series with this conversation. Let's jump into it. How are you feeling today? You look great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So do you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, before we jump directly into the topic, I wanted to share the lens that you are bringing to the conversation as an independent voice in this space of belonging, employee experience, and workplace systems. Can you just kind of give us a little insight on that lens from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. And like I said earlier, thank you so much for having me. So one of the things that I've come to appreciate is that we all come to conversations or we all come to life with a blank slate, but we all have different experiences because we bring our lived experiences, our professional experiences, and all of this has shaped me. And that's what happened to me. So I bring many different lanes, and all of those lanes are intersecting identities. So first, and those intersecting identities start from who I am as a person. So I am an immigrant from St. Lucia and I am a Black woman. I'm also an organizational psychologist at heart. I'm a researcher, I'm a professor, I'm an individual contributor. And so because of that, I was able to see so many different life or experiences at so many different angles. And so that is the lens that I bring. So with my lived experiences, being an immigrant, it really taught me how to navigate systems, to learn unwritten rules, to adapt to new environments, to think deeply about what it means to be felt, to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. And so those experiences sparked my curiosity, even from when I did my dissertation. And at the same time, when I was training as an organizational psychologist, it really gave me a different view to move beyond stories, to move beyond the organization, to move beyond seeing just an individual and looking at the system. So I was able to ask bigger questions. What does the evidence tell us? So I always bring a research background. And what I love most about my career and the intersections that I talk about is that my research informs my work and my work informs my research. So I am sitting at the intersection of being a true science practitioner, and I'm constantly moving towards theory and applying theory, testing ideas in the real world, and bringing that from not only my experiences, but the experiences of the people that I learn or meet along the way. So when I think about belonging and employee experience or work systems, I don't just think of it from a single perspective. I think about them through all of the intersections, especially as an immigrant, as a woman, as a researcher, as somebody who mentors individuals, and realizing that all of our experiences are sort of different. So I want to say that at the end of the day, that my experience really gave me the questions to ask about belonging and what it feels like to belong, not only in an organization, but belong in this world. And organizational science really helped me to answer those questions, as well as give me the tools to explore them.
I told y'all she was bad, right? Goodness gracious, out the gates. Okay. I love it though. I thank you so much for giving that background perspective. And I love that because we're already beginning to move beyond belonging being identified as a buzzword, and we're going to dive into belonging as something that is truly shaped by what people actually experience, right? You said, your different lenses help inform or help you to craft better questions, right? You're learning what better questions to ask to really get to the root of the system that is needed in the different avenues of your life and your career. So was there a moment or a pattern or a professional experience that you can recall that shifted how you understood belonging? So like not just as a feeling, but as something that shaped that's shaped by the systems. Is there a moment that you can think of that maybe helped shift that for you?
Yeah. So it started when I was in, I would say, graduate school. I again was not really new to America, but now going into the world of work. And so I needed to understand how to get a job, how to navigate systems, how to navigate corporate America. And so I started reading a lot of books about navigating those systems. And I was realizing that although the books were well intentioned, they didn't apply to me. And I say that like when you see me, I'm a Black woman. A lot of people make certain assumptions, but then I have an accent. And so at the time I was on a student visa. So telling me just get a job or quit a job or whatever, it didn't apply to me. Telling me to just network as an introvert, it didn't apply to me also. Like there were so many things and so many well-intentioned advice that was given to me that just wasn't working for me. And so I had to create my own blueprints. And I realized that that sense of belonging wasn't created by a system, right? Like there wasn't really that blueprint for me. So then I had to create my own blueprint. And what that taught me was something that I have carried throughout my entire career, that people can receive the exact same advice and have completely different capacities to act on it because of how they're navigating different systems. And herein comes the intersectionality again, right? And so throughout graduate school and my research, I didn't really have the language and what I was experiencing. And so that experience helped me to shape that because of our lived experiences, we show up differently. And so belonging means something different for every single one of us. And as somebody with the work that we do as IO psychologists, right, it is up to us to go into organizations and to shape systems where we really listen to the experiences of individuals and create those experiences for them. And another experience that I had was in doing my own research where we were designing an intervention for groups of people, but we were designing it from our ivory tower, not really understanding the lived experiences of individuals. And that's why I love community-based participatory research, because it allows you to work with people who are actually living those experiences. And I think we should bring this a little bit more into IO psychology. And there's a question that you'll ask me later where I'll touch a little bit on that. But one of the things that rang true to me is after we designed the intervention, which was around food and diabetes management, our population was like, you told me to use pasta in my food, but I don't eat pasta, I eat plantain. So here we were designing that sort of intervention and what we knew, what we thought was best, but it wasn't best for the community. And that all of that sort of showed me that like we really sometimes need to tailor systems. We need to bring into different perspectives, not just our perspectives, because we sometimes may think we know everything, but we don't really know, even though we've gone to school and, we have the theory and whatnot, but the lived experiences is just as important.
100%, 100%. And, that has me thinking about who's in the room when we're crafting these guidelines, these systems, right? Because like you said, if we're making these decisions and we're building these systems from our ivory tower, well, you're building it in this cocoon, but then you're going to deliver it to a whole lot of people who had no say in the decision making, and you're wondering why it's not translating. You're wondering why it's not sustaining, why it's not successful, but they were never a part of the conversation. And that brings about the bigger lens or question of who are you building it for?
Yeah.
Right. Because, like you said, it's wonderful in theory, but it's only good and it should only be considered a success if it translates well and if it can be sustained. And the only way that can happen is if everyone has a seat at the table.
Right.
That's truly how you start building sustainable systems in the workplace to last, is if you bring everybody along with you from conception.
Right.
Not just, and then don't call me. I'm here saying I need you to fix my team, because they said they were on board for the change, but they're really not, or they're saying they were good, but now they're unhappy. And then because I'm going to ask you, well, were they a part of the conversation?
Right. And how I like to use this, I like to say something like, folks ask us for more money, but we're giving them pizza parties, right? Like, we're not doing what they told us. And sometimes it could be such simple things that's needed, just to make somebody's work easier, somebody's life easier. Just look at the surveys and act on the surveys. It's not like changing anything that costs $1 million. Sometimes it could be very simple. Very simple.
Yeah, 100%. I'm gonna put a pin in that. Let me tell you, a pizza party is a trigger for me. We're gonna talk about it, okay? Because the level of pizza parties I have had in 15 years is insane. Okay. We're gonna come back to that. We're gonna dive into that a little bit more in a second. So the title, right, of this conversation is Belonging is Not a Program, It's a System. I want to hear what your thoughts are on that. When you hear that statement, when I brought it to you, and then you had time to reflect on it, what does that mean to you from your lens?
Yeah, so when I heard that statement and I really like the title, I immediately think about experience or employee experience. So employees do not experience work or organizations for strategies or programs. They really experience it through like everyday moments. And I think belonging is captured in the everyday moments. It's the conversations that you have with your manager after you make a mistake. It's whether your ideas are seen, they're heard, they're applied. It's what happens on your first day, how you're welcomed into work. If you have a death in the family, how you get bereavement leave. If you go on maternity leave, how you're welcome back. Whether individuals feel that they're comfortable asking for help. And I know some of those things even border along the lines of psychological safety, but they're everyday interactions, and they sort of shape how individuals feel that sort of the belonging and that they belong in the organization. And so that's why I don't think that and there's a question that you're going to ask later, but it's not reduced to just a single initiative or something. It's reflected in patterns of experiences across the employee journey. And the employee journey, that's sort of shaped by systems that people move through every day. So we think about how we hire people, how we onboard people, how we train people, how we develop people, who we promote, who we recognize, and how we go about supporting system. People, sorry, so these conditions sort of shape and create the conditions that we need for people to immediately feel that they can belong or they can flourish in the organization. So for me, belonging isn't something that the organization, like it's like you said, it's not a program, but it's these systems that we create as the employee goes through the employee journey, that they'll say, yes, I belong to the organization because the organization sees me, right? Like if somebody has a disability or whatnot, and they put necessary steps within the organization to ensure that the individual with disability is seen and they're heard. Like when somebody returns from maternity leave, everybody's journey is different. So it's not cookie cutter, copy and paste, but it's looking at like treating the individual like a human being, humanizing work. I think that's why we say sometimes it's not a program, it's not something that you could check, but it's like how you make people feel, and people actually have to feel they belong, not just saying that, oh, you belong into this organization. No, they actually have to feel, see it, to be like, yes, I truly belong in this organization because I feel seen, I feel valued, and I feel heard.
You can't fake that.
Nope.
You know what I mean? There's not a pizza party that can give you that feeling.
No.
There's not a I love a good pep talk. I do. It can be great for motivation, and I'm all here for it. But I love how you framed it. It's in the moment to moment of the employee's journey that truly defines, and it truly will identify whether or not the environment and the conditions have created a space for me to feel like I belong or not.
Yeah.
And it's not something that can be conveyed through anything but those moments, those continuous moments.
Yeah.
And that's why it can't be a program, right? Because that's a one-off. That's a one-time thing, or even if it's an annual thing, it's still just that one moment. But if the other 364 days of my experience, I feel silenced, or I feel ostracized, or I don't feel like I'm included in conversations, this one program is not going to change that.
Yeah.
Still may be quiet quitting, I still make, and so I love how you framed that. It's definitely has to be, or needs to be, a system, and leaders are going to have to look beyond the statement and truly examine the conditions.
Yeah, like let's take a like recognition, for example, right? Like some people may want to be recognized, like put it on LinkedIn, put it on Facebook, shout it out to the world or whatever. Yeah. And other people may be just like, send flowers to my home. It's just so the individual who's like, if somebody wants flowers sent to their home, or maybe a quiet recognition or whatnot, and they don't get that, they'll feel like this place isn't for me. Right. But then somebody who loves, like, put it on LinkedIn, put it on Facebook, put it in a newsletter or something, they might feel like I belong in this organization because of the way that I love to be recognized. And it's those simple moments where you could lose an employee because the employee is like, oh, I don't want to share my recognition. I don't want to be recognized by that because I want to be recognized some way different. And I say this because it's these little things, that's where belonging comes from. It's these little moments. And sometimes it's no fault of a manager. They may feel like that's just how everybody wants to be recognized. And it's easier to have like all recognition like that. Whether it's less more so than having it individualized. But when you think about the concept of belonging is so personalized and so individualized that you have to think of it like, what do my employees want? And how can I give my employees? Maybe you may not be able to give your employees everything, but At least try at times. It's the little things that counts.
100%. I'll never forget. And people laugh at this when I tell them the story, but I recall this was years ago. I did a survey, a mandatory survey, of course. And in the survey, there was like, is there anything else that you want us to know? How can we help, you know, set you up for success or something like that? And mine was very simple. I said, in the coffee room, it's just coffee. If I'm not a coffee drinker, then
Right.
and I come in on, you know, Monday morning and I'm exhausted because my kids are driving me crazy or whatever, I would love to have some tea, right? Or I'd love some hot cocoa or something like that.
Yeah.
Very, very small in the grand, you know, scheme of things, of a request of what you're asking. But it would make my life a little bit easier in the morning. It'll get me started a little bit better. Girl, a year later, still ain't nothing but coffee in that. I said, child, that next feedback, I said, don't worry about it. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
don't even worry about it because, you know, now you've told me that my voice is either not being heard or not valued in the simplest of ways. So if I can't get tea in the coffee room, you know, why should I ask for anything more? Why should I believe that my voice is going to matter in you know, a more in-depth way? Um, and you can't even grab some Lipton and toss it
Yeah.
in the room. You know what I mean?
Right. I
Um,
like this story very much. It makes me remember there's something that I always say, like, I've heard this before, like diversity is being invited to the dance, inclusion is being asked to dance, and I add my old piece where belonging is played all genres of music. So I like soca music, but somebody else may have never heard of soca music. And then there's country and western, there is tulumpa, there's, you know, there's so many things that you could play. You don't just come in and play only like rap music, right? Because not everybody likes and enjoys rap music. But if you
mhm.
play 5 segments of rap, 5 segments of country and western, 5 segments of soca, 5 segments of pop, then you give everybody. So if you have tea, hot chocolate, coffee, you allow for everybody. If you have water too, not everybody drinks tea, coffee, and whatnot. So I think your example is a great example of like even that sense of belonging. Maybe that individual who doesn't drink tea will be like, I'll never go to the break room anymore because there's no tea, and that doesn't foster interactions with other coworkers, and the other coworkers may be like, why is this person so standoffish? They never come into the break room. But it's like there's no tea in the break room. There's nothing for me in the break room, right?
Yes, yes, 100%. So you don't lost a valued employee because you ain't put no Lipton in the break room. That's crazy.
Simple.
That's
It's
crazy.
that simple.
And you know, okay, 2 points. If you can, one more time, tell me that breakdown again. The bring, you know, coming to the dance, being invited to the dance, and then showing up and being asked to dance, and then
Yeah.
playing all the music. Can you say it one more time? I thought that was
So
really great.
diversity is being asked to the dance, or diversity is being invited to the dance. So think of diversity as the numbers you need to check off the boxes.
Mhm.
Inclusion is being asked to dance. Think of that as the seat at the table, and then belonging is playing every genre of music. So
Yeah,
belonging is like you invite the person, they have a seat at the table, but their voice is actually being heard.
yeah.
And they've been seen, they've been valued, they've been recognized, they've been listened to.
Mhm. That's so good. That's so good. You know, I do this writing thing on the side every now and again, right? And so don't be surprised if I toss that in there and quote you because that's it's it's digestible, right? And it's a phrase that I can reflect on and help me to kind of make better decisions in my day to day. And it's
Yeah.
such a great way to frame it that, you know, is easily digestible and makes perfect sense. And so which stage are you trying to move in as a leader? Are you
Right.
just trying to check that box? You know, or are you truly trying to create a system of belonging, where you do play 5 minutes of reggae, you do play 5 minutes of, Western music and classical and so on and so forth. Um, oh, that was really good, girl. You did that.
Thank you. I can take credit for the first two parts, diversity and inclusion. And I don't know who said it initially, but when I think about belonging, I think about I want to hear my soca music on the dance floor, because you won't hear me
Mhm.
dancing if there is no soca music.
Yeah,
You won't see me
yeah.
dancing. So
One more part that you spoke on that I really liked, and that's the long-lasting effects of ignoring the feedback. And we'll talk about feedback a little bit in a couple of questions down here, but something, using my example of the tea in the break room, this person doesn't come into the break room now, it's nothing for them, right? So not only are you creating a sense of exclusion in that moment, but the long lasting effects is you are now could potentially be creating um, interrelational questions or concerns of your group, of your staff, because now other employees can say, oh, she too good to go in a break room, or
yeah,
why doesn't she ever talk to us, like why is
yeah,
she never coming into the space? And so they can intentionally or unintentionally begin to ostracize her as well, because maybe they start believing that assumptions, they start making
right,
assumptions about her motives and intentions, about connecting and bonding, which is so important on teams.
right.
And it's like, man, all this drama because you ain't want to buy no tea. Like that,
Because
but
of tea.
there are long lasting effects
Yeah,
that
for
can
sure.
come. And as a leader, if I'm not in tune with my team, I'm just oblivious to what's going on, now I'm gonna have to, now they're gonna call us again, girl. Can y'all come on back in and help us fix the issues within the team dynamic? I don't know why there's no synergy here. And it's like, girl, did you buy the tea?
Yeah, did you buy the
you know,
tea?
it's like,
Yeah,
but you know what I mean? Like
yeah, I
we're
know.
joking about it, but it's very serious, because one, as a leader, you need to understand the dynamics of your team, and it's all connecting the feedback, the receiving of the feedback, the doing something with it, the acknowledgement of what it is your team is truly asking. As you stated earlier, understanding what motivates your team, in the sense of, this person doesn't like public recognition. This person
Right,
wants privately, but this person thrives off of public recognition. But that's our job as leaders to know, right?
right.
And in order to know, that's now we're circling back. We're not off topic. We're still right here in
Yeah,
belonging.
yeah,
We're creating these systems, right? That bring everybody into the dance, and then play the song that makes everybody move. And it's very important to understand that all of these different plays, these different, might seemingly look separate, but they all are connected.
yeah. And it's something I do also with my students too. Like when I create in my classes, I always make sure there's audio, there's visual, and then there's something for individuals who like to read. Because I know not all students will like to sit down and listen to like a 30-minute presentation. So I'm like, here's the 30-minute presentation. Here's 30 seconds of that TikTok like. If you want to read, here's a journal article to read. I give it to all of my students, and it doesn't take much from me
Yeah.
to cater to all of my students. I don't know which students are visual. I don't know which students are audio. I don't know which students like to read. But all I know is that if I give everybody, if I put something there for everybody,
Yeah.
everyone will gravitate and everyone will get the gist of what it is that I'm trying to get them to learn. And I think sometimes managers have to think like that. It may be hard, and again, may not have the necessary resources, bringing us back to systems and whatnot. The system may not be designed for that, but then try. You just never know. And
Yeah.
another thing I want to touch on that you mentioned earlier, when you mentioned that you would not take the survey again or you stopped taking the survey, I love to say it's not survey fatigue, it's survey in action. So sometimes when we see those results declining or we see survey participation, we're quick to say, oh, we're giving them too many surveys. No, 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 no. You're not doing anything with the survey results. And that's why individuals are feeling, again, bringing it back to belonging, that I don't feel like I belong to this organization because I asked for tea and you're giving me pizza. And it's not very hard to get the tea. Just go to Costco and get tea, right? It's only more expensive to have pizza.
Right. 100%. 100%. And I could talk about feedback and the effects of it for days. It's such a great, it has potential to be such a great data, for organizations if it's used properly.
Exactly.
And we can jump. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit and get right into it because we keep coming back to it. So for you, how can employee listening data or people analytics help leaders understand whether belonging is actually being experienced or it's just being promised?
Yeah, so and I've touched on this already, so I'll bring the three overarching themes that I have. One is first moving from the employee life cycle to thinking about the employee journey, because I think the life cycle occurs in stages, right? It's recruitment, it's onboarding, it's development, it's exit. And that's important, but people don't experience work in stages. Like we said earlier, they experience work in these everyday moments, right? So belonging isn't created from that one point in the employee life cycle. It's really shaped by the thousands of interactions along the journey. So how you're welcome on your first day, whether your ideas are heard in meetings, how your feedback is delivered and received, and if it's acted on, whether you feel safe in asking questions. What happens when you come back from maternity leave or medical leave? What happens when an employee dies, when somebody in your family dies? Are you being promoted? How are you being promoted? Those simple things, right? And that helps shape whether, one, you belong in the organization, and two, whether you envision a future for yourself within the organization. So if we want to understand belonging, we really have to pay attention to these moments, try to capture them along those moments. And when we capture it within those moments, then we'll see it starting to show up in promotions and turnover intentions and our exit surveys and whatnot. The second shift, which, speaking of exit surveys, is kind of moving beyond a single survey question or relying on quantitative data alone. And you did say that, you said that there's so much data, but the survey data, it actually measures like a point in time. And for some organizations, they do their employee surveys every year, right? And as a researcher, I absolutely love data, but I love quantitative and qualitative and mixed methods. And I think the quantitative data, which is asking somebody a survey question such as, do you feel like I belong in the organization? That can be like a yes or no, truly, I believe, or whatever. But then once you ask that question, you can dig further. When didn't you feel like you belong in the organization, right? So now you're getting additional data points on a qualitative response. You have focus groups. Maybe there are certain, when you examine your quantitative data, you realize that there are certain groups or pockets of your organization that have lower scores. You start to observe a little bit more. You start to ask a little bit more questions. You start to, have the conversations with individuals. So you could sort of start to understand like the root cause, why they do not feel like they belong. And it could be something as like you didn't put tea, right?
Right.
As that, or it could be something as grand as my manager is being exclusive, right? Which brings me now to the third point, where I think that there should be a shift in involving employees in designing the solutions. So earlier I spoke about community-based participatory research, and in IO, I am very big on organizational-based participatory research, and that's simply a sort of like research practice, like action research or participatory approach, where you have everybody having an equal footing on like if it's a panel or if it's a group of just researchers, managers, employees, everybody having an equal voice. It's not because I have a PhD that I am the expert in the room. I may be the expert in the room on the theory, but the employee may be the expert in the room with boots on the ground. So I may be creating something, say, for mothers. I'm not a mother, and I'm like, oh, maybe mothers might want a meeting at 7 a.m. And the mothers are like, who asked for this? I didn't ask for this. I asked for my child. So
Right,
why you have
exactly.
to listen for me at 7 a.m.?
Yeah.
Right. So instead of the designing the programs or the policies for the employees, we should design them with the employees. So that means that the people experiencing the work often have the greatest insight onto what's working well, what needs changes. And so when we have employees as partners, then we improve the research. So I think that's
Mm,
how people analytics and employee listening become the most powerful. They're not simply tools for connecting data. I think they're tools for understanding the human experience and sort of like humanizing work so that we could make it better systems, right? So when you pair evidence with employee voices, I think it will be something that's powerful. Um,
mm,
we had a focal article a few weeks ago or months ago, where it really was on like as IO psychologists, we tend to focus a lot on like measuring variables, but we should be talking a little bit more about the lived experiences of people. And I think that's where people analytics and employee experience can come in. Let's move away from the engagement surveys for a while and really dive into having conversations with individuals.
100%. I love that. Um, what what would you say that leaders should be careful not to do when they're collecting that kind of data?
That's a great question. I think sometimes leaders are so focused on who said what, and it doesn't matter who said what, right? It doesn't. All that matters is this is what your employees are experiencing right now. And I think sometimes leaders have some sort of fear towards data, and especially if it doesn't say what they want it to say or what they expect it to say. But I think data is such a beautiful thing, right?
Mhm.
It tells you so much, and that you could use this data to improve over and over and over again. I'm pretty sure if somebody looks at the employee experience surveys or any survey any employee survey, there's been feedback for probably 10 years that people are still talking about today. That doesn't mean
Mm,
that there is not anything being done. But I think it's because sometimes individuals don't look at the surveys and just take the more positive sides without looking at the negative sides. But you need to look at it, needs to be balanced.
mhm,
And I think it's just that when leaders are looking at surveys, they should come with the lens of this is not here to hurt me or say that I'm doing a bad job, but how can I use this data to continue to improve not only on the experiences of the employees, but on the organization as a whole?
mhm. You can't be scared of it. You can't be scared of the data. You can't.
No.
They're and that really is not just in the workplace, right? We're both data girls. That's our background. That's what we love.
Yeah.
And there's a reason because growth comes from that. Clarity, as you were stating, clarity comes from that. It's not about who said it. It's why are they saying it? Why did they feel the need to express this in this moment? What conditions are in place that maybe you didn't know about were in place? Maybe you were ignored. Maybe maybe it was intentionally, maybe it was not. But here we are.
Here we are.
So let's deal with it, right?
Right.
If it's truly a system that you're wanting to create and build and not a box that you're checking off, then you can't be scared of the data because what are we building, right? What are we building? And I love how you frame that. I'm gonna do a t-shirt. Don't be scared of the data. It's okay.
Don't be scared of the
Don't
data.
be scared of the data. It's
Yeah, it's your friend. It tells you a lot.
yeah, it tells you a lot, and I try to be very um, open to accountable moments. Yeah, because that's how I grow. That's how
Yeah.
you grow as a person. That's how you grow as a leader. It, it's naive to believe that every data is going to say 5 stars, no notes. Right?
Yeah.
It's either extremely arrogant or it's extremely naive.
Right,
So
right, right.
So, and leaving space
Yeah.
for the lower numbers, leaving space for the unfriendly responses. Um, it just makes it better. It just makes you better. It makes the organization better. It makes the team better when
Yeah.
we truly value the good, bad, and ugly of what data tells us. And then we do something about
Yeah.
it. You know,
And
we
I
don't
also
sit
think, yeah, there's a question that you had to ask me about where belonging often gets reduced to initiatives. And I think
there.
that ties onto that because
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
think programs and the quantitative data, it's very visible. But when you look at systems, it's often invisible. And I say that because, like, sometimes I have a systems thinking approach, which has gotten me into trouble more than once. But because, like, I feel like sometimes, like, we're talking about systems and people don't get into the why of
Hmm.
things. It's like, okay, somebody isn't coming to work and we cast them off like there's always attribution bias, right? So we're not
Yep.
coming to work because we're sick, but somebody is reporting sick and it's like, oh, this person just doesn't come to work or doesn't want to come to work. But then you have to ask the question why,
Yeah.
right? And so the data will tell you why is this happening. And for any leader, leaders tend to think about certain things. Maybe you could see an employee who's slacking off, or you could see an employee who is bringing their whole selves to work or something. And you may be curious as to why is this person showing up at 9 and leaving at exactly 5, right? Or why is this person showing up really early and leaving really late? That's a data point. That tells you
Mm.
something that you could use. So maybe you should not look at data as qualitative or quantitative, but there's a data point in every single thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like just observe and take this as kind of like a data. And it's like instead of saying like, did we launch a program or did we do this? Did we check off a box? Then ask what is actually like to work here every day, right?
Yeah.
So as a senior leader, it might be all bed and roses and whatnot, but for somebody else or somewhere, it might be like, this is not a good experience for me.
Hmm.
And it's just because they didn't bring tea, right? It's as simple as that. It's not a good experience. I think
Yeah.
sometimes we shouldn't take our own experience, even us as IO psychologists, we do that as well. We take our experiences and we blanket it across the board and be like, if I'm having a good experience at work, then that means everybody's having a good experience. No, not everyone is having a good experience because one, not everyone has the same lived experiences. And two, we don't see the world the same way. So there are so many things happening in the background that has absolutely nothing to do with work, but it's
Yep.
impacting how we show up at work.
100%. And you have to leave space for that. We have to remember it's such a it's such a it's such a childlike concept. Um, not in a, no shade, but it really is a very adolescent concept of you have to remember we're dealing with humans. We are whole human individuals with private lives, with families, with private stresses, with children and all of these. It doesn't just go away because we step into your doors from 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever. Um, it's carried with us, just like when we leave work, we don't always leave work at work, right? We're very nuanced and complex humans. And as leaders and team, in organizations, you cannot, you can't ignore that. You can't scratch it
Yeah.
out. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. And because the CEO can come in and raise all kinds of, on the whole organization if his wife pissed him off 10 minutes before walking through that door. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
let's not pretend like it doesn't affect everyone.
Yeah.
It really, really does. So if you know that about yourself, let's be honest, excuse me, about that and leave space and ask, curious. Why is this person always coming in directly at 8, always leaving exactly at 4, no room to do anything more? Or why is this person always coming in early, always staying super late? You know, because that is going to ultimately lead to burnout. right?
Yes,
So it's
exactly.
beyond that one moment here, right? And if you feel like this
Yeah,
person is a valued employee, then you might want to start asking these questions now before they burn themselves out, and
right, right.
then they're no good to anybody. So, great points. We're gonna wrap up very soon. So I want to get these two last questions out. Um, when people don't feel like they belong, how can that show up in the workplace? And perfect segue. How can that show up in the workplace before anyone names it directly?
I think it starts with sort of like burnout, quiet quitting, which is disengagement, and all of those
Mhm.
things. Because I think when you have people being seen in the workplace, people being valued, people being, ever explaining themselves and whatnot, I tend to think of this like energy. You start to see the shift in energy. And if you pay attention, then you start to see it. Like when people don't feel like they belong, right? They often spend an incredible amount of energy managing the environment around them, right? So they're wondering whether they can ask a question without being judged, whether they need to explain aspects of their identity or background, whether they have to prove themselves over and over and over again. And you could see that showing up in the energy. Somebody who was very eager on the first day to ask questions and say that they want to work, this person is less likely to be like, raise their hands for something. They're less likely to talk right now. So all of those things are just ways that when people don't feel seen, when people don't feel valued, when they don't feel heard, that's when you start to see a change or a shift in the energy. And there might be many other things that's going on, but you start to see that they're not spending their time learning, creating, collaborating, or solving problems because they just keep running on a treadmill all of the times, right? But I feel like when again somebody is having a good experience or they feel that they're seen, they've been heard, there's a pep in their step, right? They're more likely to raise their hands and
Yeah.
give an idea or say a suggestion or even challenge an assumption or something as opposed to the opposite of that.
Yeah. And they feel, that we talked about it very briefly earlier, the psychological safety
Yeah,
that has been created within the system that gives people the confidence to challenge. Like, hey, I understand what you're saying in theory, but in reality, that's not sustainable. Or you're missing a big chunk of this picture here. Or, there's a piece here that needs to be worked out a little bit farther. Those type of moments, right, make or break people's experiences and how
yeah,
they, what they feel like this place is somewhere I belong, I can stay, right?
yeah.
Because even in those uncomfortable moments, there's still safety there.
Yeah. And I think people tend to mistake like belonging, going back to what I said about diversity, inclusion, and belonging. People think that sometimes belonging is sort of like removing differences, like we should not have differences. I think it's more
Mm-hmm.
about creating an environment where differences don't become unnecessary barriers to contribution. So
Yes.
even my student recently graduated with a PhD. Shout out to Dr. Lisa. But she studied workplace friendships and looked at psychological safety. And I think it's very important. What showed up is that while there's psychological safety on the team level,
Mm-hmm.
psychological safety on the individual level is something that I am so curious about studying right now because a manager can do every single thing to create a perfect or psychologically safe environment, but there may be somebody on the team who does not feel psychologically safe. And that may be simply because of, again, it comes back to the lived experiences, right? And no matter what the manager does, it's still the individual still doesn't create that psychology. The individual doesn't belong. So it's
Yeah.
almost like what we saw in her research coming up is that need to belong and that psychological safety, the way that we're thinking about it, like the cat has to come before the horse or whatnot, one of them
Mhm.
is an antecedent. And so it's figuring out, do you need to belong first before you experience psychological safety, or do you
Mm.
need to experience psychological safety first and then feel like the need to belong? So I feel like there are so many things happening here.
Yeah.
um, that again, we need to bring the science to the leaders, which is why, and I'll put a shameless plug in here for TEEP, which is why we need more individuals to be writing on in TEEP, so that, and if you don't know what TEEP is, but it's a journal for SciUp. It's one of our premier journals. I'm the editor for it, but we need more of those like lived experiences, or what do practitioners do in the everyday practice, and then for the researchers, bring in like what practitioners can do on a daily basis to sort of have that sort of inclusion and belonging.
100%. I love that. Excuse me. And oh man, that's so good. Listen, Maya, you and I can sit here another 2 hours and dissect all of this. This has been so amazing. We're gonna have to close on in a couple minutes. People gotta get back to lunch. But I do want to ask my final question before I close out. As I stated at the beginning of this, at the heart of every Dream Leap conversation, I have to ask, what would you tell the person building toward the level that you now occupy?
Wow, I love this question. I think I mentioned it earlier, so I'll close off with that. But create your own blueprints. As an immigrant, I did not have a blueprint. I cannot tell you the number of immigrants I spoke to who I thought had a similar experience as me. They did not have that experience as me. I'm an introvert. So all of the advice that I received did not apply to me. And so I had to sit with myself, understand who I am as a person, you work on my strengths, and not see my weaknesses as something that holds me back, but my weaknesses are something that I'm not strong on. So maybe I can, delegate it to somebody else. So I am an introvert. I probably don't like speaking that much, but I have extrovert friends. And so I let my extrovert friends do the talking for me because they just love that, right? And they may not be great thinkers or whatever, but then they will tap onto me to be like, hey, I have a problem that I'm pretty sure you've thought about for years. So tell me what you think about that, or help me in that kind of way. So that's how we balance each other. I would say sort of like get off social media at times, take the break, because social media has a way of clouding our memories, our visions, our reality, and make us think that we are not where we're supposed to be at the time. But again, we're on our own path, on our own journey. And there's something that I call the messy middle. I think a lot of us, especially now with everything that's going on, we are kind of in the messy middle, probably a lot of my friends laid off in between getting a job or whatnot, maybe trying to do a career shift and able to pivot at that time because of the way that life is, the economy or whatnot. And I think we're feeling that we're failures because when we log on to social media, everybody either has a job, doing great, starting a business or whatever. And we're like, oh, wow, what about me? But the thing is, if we spoke more about our failures and those messy middles, right? We more spoke about, like, somebody might say, I was a director for 5 years before I became a VP. I was just about to quit before I got that promotion, right? Having that sort of conversation could make you realize, like, me too, I am experiencing that. And whatever it is that I'm experiencing is normal and it's just part of life and it's just part of the career, which brings me back into creating your own blueprints, because not everybody has well-intentioned advice and they may work for certain people, but you don't know what's going on in the background. And so I think it's important to take that advice and apply it within your own lens of belonging and create that blueprint for you of what's your life, or how you want your life to be.
Yeah. Oh, that was so great. I love it. I love it so much. Thank you. I just
Really enjoyed
thank you
it.
so much for this conversation. I'm grateful for the way you helped us think about belonging, not just as a feeling, but as something that's shaped by systems, by leadership and data and trust, right? And then those everyday moments. One of the things I'm taking away here is that belonging cannot simply be announced. It can't be a program. It has to be designed.
It
It
has
has to be reinforced.
intentionally.
It has to be intentional. It has to be listened for, and it has to be experienced. So So, everyone who joined us live today, thank you. Thank you for being a part of the very first Dream League Lunch and Learn conversation. The Dream League is mentorship through conversation. And this was exactly that kind of conversation I hope this series would start on, a space for wisdom and reflection, and a space for, again, reaching back while continuing to build forward. So, if this conversation has resonated with you, then please continue to follow the Workplace Reset on LinkedIn. Please reach out to Dr. Maya Williams. She's also on LinkedIn. I did see someone in the comments say, ask about TIP. They wanted to know how they can access, I assume, access it or maybe write. I'm not quite sure, but I can post. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'll make sure I'll give you the link so you can go directly to it. And again, Dr. Maya, she runs the show. I told you she's a big deal, y'all. I wasn't playing. And so feel free to reach out to her if you have any questions about it. But again, follow Workplace Reset Consulting Group, follow Dr. Maya to continue watching her journey as she just continues to do amazing things. And
One thing I want to add about
yeah,
TIP is that our deadline for our winter issue or fall
mhm,
issue is August 1st, but the individual can reach out to me, and just as they could reach out to you for the link, you could also go on sciup.org, go into research and publications and look
mhm.
for our publications and TIP, and then you could see all of the requirements for TIP, but also reach out to Portia, reach out to myself, and I'll be more than happy to share with you some more. But right, please, write.
Yes.
Write those
And
things.
I definitely plan on getting it. So I've done 3 or 4 articles through TIP. I love it. I'm so glad to be back in my writing bag. And but there are so many amazing articles on there already, like really good insight and data that's already been published. And like she said, write it out. Let's continue sharing and supporting each other in these aspects. And I'm going to post the next lunch and learn information, date, time, and all that good jazz. I would love for you to come back and join us with my next guest speaker. Thank you, thank you, thank you again. Thank you, Maya. I appreciate you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
Likewise.
Until next time, guys. Come on back to the Dream League next time. Have a great one. Bye.
Bye.